We look now, bring it all back home, where South Africa has marked 25 years of democracy, and strides have been made in many areas. But when it comes to reading skills, the country is facing a crisis. South Africa ranked last out of 50 countries in the 2016 Progress in International Reading Literacy study. And it's emerged that nearly half of South African parents don't read to their children. To unpack this, we're joined in our Cape Town studios by Professor Xolisa Guzula, a literacy expert from the University of Cape Town, also a lecturer in language at the School of Education there. Joining us via Skype is Professor Janet Condy, the Director of the Literacy Development Research Unit at CPUT. All right, thank you so much, ladies, for joining me this morning. Xolisa, if I can start with you. Now, Stats SA released a survey this week which found that nearly half of South African parents don't read to or with their children. What do you attribute this culture to?
First of all, I think we need to really think about where people are coming from, because we have different societies valuing different skills in literacy. We have English middle-class families that have access to books in their language and they read to their children. But we have an oral tradition of storytelling, which is a literate skill that is not finding its way soon enough in schooling. And we have to then figure out whether book reading is more important than storytelling. And in my view, there's no one that is more important than the other, because the stories that we read are the stories that we tell, and then we write as well. So I think that this binary, this false binary between story reading and storytelling is actually making a lot of African language-speaking parents look like they are not telling stories to their children, look like they are not doing anything about literacy. But also, we need to think about, do we ever talk about the English-speaking middle-class parents not being able to tell stories orally to their children? Because the way we've defined literacy in the country is that we have 4 skills that are required for literacy development: speaking and listening, reading and writing. But we tend to be focusing more on the reading skills rather than also on the storytelling skills. So I think that's one thing that I can say.
If I can stop you there, because a different study a different study also found that, took place about 2 years ago, that nearly 80% of children aged between 9 and 10 cannot read in their mother tongue as well. You know, and I know you want to separate the storytelling from the actual reading as well, and some of that storytelling would take place in one's mother tongue, does it not?
In one's mother tongue, but it's not finding its way to the classroom, because the way we define literacy, we say literacy is an ability to read and write. We ignore what the resources, the storytelling resources that the children bring into the classroom. Secondly, we define literacy narrowly as being able to decode letter sounds. So when we talk about reading, reading is much more than decoding words, like breaking words into the smallest building blocks or building up words. It is much more about reading the world. It is also about reading for meaning. And for a long time, our teachers have focused a lot on decoding skills rather than on teaching children comprehension strategies so that they can understand the text that they are reading.
Okay.
It comes from the fact that whenever there's a problem, there's a problem with reading in the country, we always go back to the basics. We say the basics are teach children a, e, I, o, u, ma, me, mi, mo, mu, rather than sharing stories with children, whether they are being read or being told.
All right.
We have to remember that African languages have been ignored for a long time.
Yeah, that is correct. African languages have been ignored for a long time. But I just want to get Professor Janet Condy, the Director of the Literacy Development Research Unit there, to comment on what you're saying, that maybe the teachers are actually focusing on the wrong things when it comes to literacy skills in schools. Professor?
Yes, I believe that there's a lot of emphasis on memory recall. When we read stories, then the teachers ask questions about the content in the story, rather than linking the story to the children's personal lives and asking them opinions. I think the teachers are limited by the curriculum that has not given them much time to allow children to debate and discuss the content and the morals of the story. And I think that is a very important skill that needs to be done, is we need to encourage children to give their opinions, to link it to their own lives, to evaluate the stories. But these are not being done, and the teachers are not being taught how to do this. And these skills need to be trained, need to be role modeled during their teacher training experiences.
Professor, are we seeing a marked difference between the private schools and the public schools when it comes to some of the research that is taking place out there and that you are doing yourselves?
There is a big divide between the two, but I think the resources, the class sizes, many of the private schools do not follow the CAPS curriculum. They follow their own curriculum, and it allows them time to have these discussions, which is not happening in the mainstream schools. In the mainstream schools, the teachers are being very limited by this curriculum that is very demanding. They get inspectors to come, or subject advisors to come in and check what they're doing and have they done these skills on these particular days. And also the teachers are teaching to the tests rather than actually developing these literacy skills or thinking skills. And that is a very big gap in the mainstream schools. But in the private schools, they have access to that. They're doing that. They're teaching thinking skills. They're expecting their children to, or the children and the teachers, to develop the thinking skills in their children.
Okay. Let me go back to Xolisa. Just ask you as a final thought as well here. What do you think of the curriculum, the comments about the curriculum, and also what's the way forward for you? How can we correct what you feel is wrong with the system?
I feel that we are a multilingual country, and that the curriculum is calibrated to the needs of monolingual children. So a lot of our children, for example, if you think about urban spaces, the children are multilingual. They don't come to school speaking only one language. But the curriculum, the way it's set up, it requires a separation between the languages, as if the children will learn better if they separate their languages. So we need to change from a monolingual orientation to a multilingual orientation in our curriculum, so that we calibrate the curriculum to the needs of bilingual children. Secondly, the curriculum is also largely geared towards the skills-based approach of literacy instruction, rather than the rich literacies that we think children need. Because literacy is narrowly defined in the curriculum, we need to encourage teachers to offer rich literacies to the children, literacies that include storytelling, that include art, that include performance, so that the children are richer. But the way we are assessing literacy right now, we are only privileging the children whose cultures are in book reading.
All right, thank you so much. Last word now from Professor Janet Condy. What do you think of those comments there in terms of the language issue as well? And for you, Professor, what do you think is the way forward?
Yes, I agree with exactly with what Zoli is saying. I think that the way forward is, or one particular way forward is to involve teachers more in the training, to get the teachers to look globally at what is literacy in the broader definition of literacy, to teach higher order thinking skills, and to role model that, to go out into the schools and role model it, and to give time to that, to do the oral teaching that Zoli is talking about, as well as to follow up with high order questioning skills to get the children involved in their stories, in the storytelling. And I think the way forward for my unit is to go out and train teachers to do these things, to teach high order reading skills, be it in a written form or in an oral form, as Zoli is saying, and to embrace all the languages in this.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me for this discussion. Professor Janet Condy, Director of the Literacy Development Research Unit, and also Xolisa Guzula joining me from Cape Town there. She's a lecturer in language and literacy at the School of Education. Ladies, thank you so much for spending some time with us this morning.